We are live. Hey, everybody. This is Kate Fossum with Brand Pollinators. I've got Jeff Martin here, Pipcorn, and we are just waiting on Dinesh and Sarah to pop in to talk to us about their experience on Shark Tank. So I'll talk a little bit about Brand Pollinators for a second in case you don't already know. We are a consultancy that works with purpose-driven emerging brands, and we are so excited to be able to help as many brands as possible and kind of work together to elevate brands so that we can make a big impact on the planet. So today we are joined by some former Shark Tank founders who have bravely brought their product on Shark Tank, and amazingly enough, they've all received offers from sharks on the show, so it's very exciting. So I'm going to first introduce Jeff. Jeff Martin is the co-founder of Pipcorn, and he and his sister started Pipcorn when they discovered an heirloom corn kernel that produced a popcorn that was easier to digest. So yeah, thanks for being here, Jeff.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This is it's always fun to relive the Shark Tank days and kind of talk about the experience. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And then Dinesh is from Incredible Eats, and he was on Shark Tank just this last season. And he has an amazing product, which is an edible cutlery. So Dinesh, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Kate, for having me here. And really excited to share my experience. Nice meeting you, Jeff, as well.
Yeah,
Same.
so you guys don't know each other?
No, first
We
time.
do now.
We do now, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, very cool. And I know Sarah should be joining us as well. And Jeff, you know Sarah, right? She was a season ahead of you, or the same season as yours, maybe?
She was a season or two after, but we actually were away in Cabo a couple of years ago with a couple of Barbers entrepreneurs, and that's where I met Sarah for the first time. Was at a beautiful resort in Cabo, and we kind of were able to kind of talk about our experiences back then. But I haven't talked to her in a while, so it'll be fun to reconnect.
Oh, wow. Very cool. So there's so because you had the same investor, then you were able to make the connection there. Oh, that's very cool. And Dinesh, who is the investor? Who is the shark that picked you up on the show?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be interested by 4 sharks, so I chose Lori among them. Lori
Nice.
Grenia.
Nice. And did you have connections with some of the other entrepreneurs that she's worked with?
No, because actually the deal didn't go through after the pitch. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So
So
this is good information.
yep.
So you may think that when you are on the show and you get an offer that it's like a done deal, but in reality, a lot of times what has been discussed on the show doesn't come to be in the future. So that's definitely a good thing to know as you go into it. So Jeff, one of the things that you had mentioned to me earlier was when you were going into the show and they were doing the recording, you said something you didn't expect was that there wasn't any music playing when you were walking in.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Totally threw us off. Like because you're so used to watching the show where the doors open and you see the people, and then that like very iconic kind of dun 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 dun, and at home it kind of gets you going a little bit and it sets it up. But when you're there live, you could hear a pin drop. So I don't know why I thought there would be music playing, while we were filming, but Dinesh, I don't know if they had music when you were on, but for us it was quiet, and it
No.
definitely threw us off a little bit.
Yep, you're right. It was very quiet. The experience is completely different from what you see on TV. I think Mark Cuban mentioned somewhere that even the path you walk, it's actually very short. It's angled. It's you don't walk for that long actually. And this is very eerie silence when you go there, because you have to stand in that carpet for like a minute without talking, without doing anything. So
Yeah, that's the part that maybe we had a heads up, but Kate, when you walk down the hallway and the doors open and you're in front of the sharks, on TV you just start pitching, right? You just go right into your pitch and hopefully you do a great job and get a deal and everything is kind of works out. But when you get through that door, you have to stand there, like Dinesh is saying, you have to stand there for like a minute while the camera kind of goes in front and they get different shots, like coming back from commercial, they have to get some stuff. And so you're just like staring at the sharks, right? And we were like smiling and it was like just to break the tension, right? Because it's like this whole moment and then you're there and then you can't start just yet. So we're kind of like trying to just like smile and see who would smile back and all that stuff.
Yeah, you totally must feel like you're being sized up, like just standing there without even getting to say anything yet. Oh my gosh, how nerve-wracking.
But also kind of fun because in that moment, Dinesh, I don't know about your experience, but when we were there, you could like you can make you can there's a lot of communication that can take place without saying anything. And in those moments where everybody is quiet, not just us, right? Everybody is quiet and not really moving that much, including the sharks. There is an opportunity to kind of communicate and see who might be, maybe more engaged in that moment or might be, thinking about something else. So I think it's actually really valuable for piece of time.
That's true. That's true. Actually, I had quite a bit like an eyelid winks and all that with a couple of sharks and the smiles and the smile back at you. It's not that hard. It's just that it's a little weird to just stay silent for like a minute without saying anything. But you can use your face to express and say your highs.
Oh man. So Sarah's here. Great. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Sorry about the technical issues. 3 browsers in, I finally got it to work. So,
sorry about that. Yeah, it's always a challenge. But yes, Sarah is here. She is a co-founder of Piper Y, and she was on season 7. Thank you so much for joining us. We were just chatting about that feeling when you walk in, there's no music, they haven't started listening to your pitch yet, and you're just awkwardly standing there hoping to make like some positive eye connection with one of the sharks.
Yeah.
Did you have that feeling as well?
I had a really bizarre experience. So we were actually the last to go up. So we were in this little room all day. I don't even remember. It must have been like 6 or 8 hours or something crazy, but we were just waiting. And then they like knock on the door. I spill coffee everywhere. I'm like rushing to deal with that. And then, so I actually was just completely focused on like, don't have coffee burns, like make sure that the outfit is still working. So by the time I got out, I think it was just so rushed. And I was really just like so focused on, okay, remember the pitch, don't forget anything, because things were so hectic getting out here. And then it was like, I was just so happy to be in there because there's so much wait time leading up to it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, if anybody here is watching and has a question for one of the founders here, please feel free to chime in. I forgot to mention that earlier on, but love to hear from you to know questions that you may have so that we can get those answered. But Sarah, one thing I wanted to ask you about too is on the show, you guys brought a model with you to the pitch who said she'd been running all morning, wearing your deodorant, and then went around and had the sharks like smell her armpits.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to do that? And how are you feeling when she was actually doing that? Like, were you afraid that they were just going to freak out?
Yeah, because it's very rare going on the show that you have a human model, because usually your props are your set or your products. And they said in this case, it's kind of a hard product to demonstrate. So you're allowed to bring a human prop, basically.
Okay.
And so her name is Noelle. She's, I've known her for years. She's been such an incredible ambassador to our brand. And she had a very personal connection to using natural products through a family illness, and then also just her own personal health journey. So she was like the perfect person to bring on. So while a lot of it had to be staged to say like, okay, she was running all morning, which she probably did work out, but she had to kind of like, it had to be sort of a staged version. She actually had been using the product for a while, and really believed in it. And so I think it actually added a lot to the set. And it was almost like an additional pitch because the sharks were asking her questions and then she was jumping in and pitching on our behalf.
That's very cool. So Jeff, I know you had Jen there with you. How did you decide like who was gonna go on when it was your turn?
So Jen, Teresa, and I started this thing, and we were kind of just like figuring out what to do live, and we kind of thought like the brother sister story would kind of play well, and we were kind of guided and had some, maybe got some advice that was maybe what we should be doing. And I don't know how people could go up there alone like that. That to me was more of probably a bigger takeaway. And now they have pitches where you can have maybe 3 people and some more like larger families go on. But back then it was really like single or maybe like a partnership. But yeah, I don't know how people could go out there and do it alone. Like I could never have gone up there by myself and pitched and had a good outcome without a doubt. So I'm very happy that she was up there with me and we could tackle it together.
Dinesh, you did it. You went up there alone.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, from my side, I already gave quite a few pitches before that, so I was not really worried about like going there alone and giving the pitch. I was very comfortable. Like I have this very outward personality that I like to talk a lot. So, but one thing that surprised me the most, which I was not prepared for, they all 5 talk at the same time. It doesn't in the on the TV you don't see that. You're like, okay, one person talks, the guy on the entrepreneur answers it, but I'm like, let me speak. So that there's a very slight frustration moment that all of them will talk at the same time and you're supposed to deal with them again at the same time. So that was like the most challenging thing that I faced in that entire pitch.
We had the exact same experience, just to jump in quickly. And that was the biggest shock to me too, Dinesh, was like, and the hardest part was managing the room because on TV, it seems so organized, but in real life, it was so chaotic. It's like, no, don't answer her question, answer my question, or no, it doesn't matter what that you like, focus on me. And like managing the personalities was such a challenge. And we were totally thrown, Dinesh, the exact same way that we were expecting it to be like one person asks a question, then we answer. And it was total, in a really beautiful way, it was total chaos.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We've got a question from Tanya. She says, what would you have said or done differently going into Shark Tank again? So based on the way it went this time, is there something that you wish went differently? Jeff?
I think that, geez, that's a good question. And honestly, I don't know if we would have done anything. Like we're coming in, like we knew we wanted to deal with Barbara. We knew that we were trying, like the goal was like stay in there long enough and try to appeal to Barbara enough that she'll eventually come in and offer us a deal. So I don't know, would I have done anything differently? When we came in with a pretty aggressive valuation, so really no regrets there. We got the partner we wanted. I don't really know if we would have done it. And maybe we would have made the set a little, because like the entrepreneur has to pay to bring the materials out to the shooting and set up the whole thing. And we had no money. So we literally got like a wire cart off of Uline. If anybody knows Uline, it's like a big supply company. They have like everything. So we just sent that out, built it on set, and then had bags. So I think maybe if anything, I would have next time maybe gotten like a more professional looking display. We were trying to replicate like a grocery shelf. And I don't know, maybe there could have been a better way to display the product at the time, but I don't know if that even matters or if anybody notices. It's just us.
I mean, you got a good outcome from it, so.
Yeah, I'll try to think of a better answer, but that's my answer.
Okay. What about you, Sarah? Was there anything specifically that you think you would do differently next time?
Yeah, I mean, we had a really big one. It was basically being prepared with our inventory because before the show, we were so small scale. We were handcrafting maybe 200 to 500 units a month. And then we were in discussion. So after, like fast forward to pitch for Shark Tank and then get the call back, then we start talking to a manufacturer. And when you're small and you don't have the money to invest in their minimums, we kind of put a lot of things on hold and we said, okay, we're not sure if we can meet those minimums, but we at least want to make sure you're ready. if and when we do get on Shark Tank. And we ended up getting an air date like 3 months earlier than we were expecting. And we had about 2 weeks notice, and during the holidays. So during the holidays for our product, it's usually like 6 to 8 weeks to prepare inventory. So we basically went on with no inventory except for a few things that we were able to put together last minute. And yeah, I mean, we were just back ordered for, it was consistently for like 6 months after the show, just trying to constantly catch up because we would get a rerun and then we would have new customers coming in, but we still didn't have stock. So yeah, I would say like most companies are caught off guard with something, whether it's like their website is not set up properly to handle the traffic, or they don't have enough stock, or they prepare too much inventory and then they run into the financial crunch. So it's like there's always something, and it's really hard to predict going into it, you know, basically what the timing is going to look like or what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Dinesh? Any advice on doing something a little differently?
Yeah, glad to see Sarah was on the same path that I had. For me, the supply chain issues because of COVID was crazy, and my manufacturing was in India. So when it got aired, I didn't have any stock because I sold off all my old stock. I was expecting the new stock to come, fresh stock to arrive, and it took like 3 months to come. So apart from that, if on in the tank, I mean in the on the carpet, um, there are two big things that I wanted to disclose, which I couldn't because again, I was not allowed to finish my sentences, and I like the first two. One is like I sold my home for this, and the second is our products are like carbon negative and plastic negative certified. So those are the two most important things that I thought I would announce. But the way that it went, the way that we spoke and all, those 2 points didn't come out. But otherwise, other than that, no matter how crazy that, I mean, those like I think it mine went on for 90 minutes. The entire thing was. The outcome was very good. I think the way they edited is beautifully done. So they did get the message across, even though I missed my two most important points. But otherwise, yeah. So again, as Sarah mentioned aptly, it's very hard to judge what could go wrong. I mean, yes, it is a huge opportunity. It is like really a huge PR opportunity. But how do we prepare for it? The websites or the inventory? Do we have more of it, less of it? Like how do people react? So there's a lot of other things that you need to explore and make sure that you're ready for anything that comes to you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. So, Jillian asked the question, how did you decide on your financial ask initially? So what made you come to those numbers? Like what was the research that you did when you were going to your pitch? And you know, an additional question is, did you have a specific shark in mind that you wanted to work with?
Uh,
Sarah?
oh,
Oh,
good.
sorry, Dinesh, go
No,
ahead.
no, 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 no. Go ahead. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Since I was on mute, so I thought I just. Yeah. So I had this a couple of articles. I don't remember the exact sources. I'll be happy to share with you, Kate. I'll have to dig
Oh,
through it.
awesome.
They actually have this nice way to evaluate your business because, again, I think the reason why people ask that question is if you had not raised before, how do you exactly value your company, right? How much is an idea worth? How much is your sales worth, and all that stuff. So there was a couple of articles which actually provided that step-by-step analysis and how much each stage, at which stage are you and how much you worth, how much is your worth. So it's a combination of total addressable market, your sales revenue, existing sales revenue, your first to market, or do you have competitors and all that stuff. So there are a couple of resources which were very useful for me. I'll be happy to share, but I don't have it at the top of my mind right now. And yes, I wanted to go with Daniel Libetsky, kind owner. He was one of my sharks because he's in the CPG food industry, and I'm like trying to supply edible cutlery. And my second was Mark actually because he has the Mavericks, and he can actually put me through all the stadiums because I wanted to go approach and hit where the plastic is used the most. Single-use
Mhm,
plastic need. Yes, I'm
mhm.
not really a person who wants to propose saying people stop using your stainless steel spoons, use your edible cutlery. That's not my goal. My goal is where the single use need is a must, like stadiums, concert halls, even if you go to an ice cream shop or takeouts, where you really need that single use need. That's where I wanted to go. So that's the reason why I was like comfortable with those two. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Even Loria, like Loria is my third option to be frank, because she had a good success at Starbucks before with the pizza cupcakes. So that was
Mhm.
also a good match. So Yeah, I instead of choosing one or two, I kind of looked into what each of them can bring our company the value, not just apart from just the money, the synergy that they had with the previous companies and how they use them. So that's the homework that I did for each and every shark. It's not just like top two or three.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, I know you said Barbara, you were going after Sarah. Did you specifically want to work with Barbara as well, or did you have somebody else in mind?
So I think that you know, a lot of entrepreneurs go in, anyone with sort of a niche product, they kind of assume that the audience is the founder's background or demographic. So we kind of had a feeling that the sharks that would be interested would be the woman sharks, because they assumed that we were making a product just for women. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. But we make a product that actually is for everyone. It just so happens that majority of our customers are women, but actually almost like 30% of our customers are men. We make a natural deodorant that's essentially for everybody. So we made it so that it was gender neutral and vegan and cruelty free and also good for all different ages. And so we really tried to get that point across, but it's hard when you only have, I think we're in there for about 45 minutes, and there's so much focus on the financials and like, how do you want to grow? But so I think it was a little bit, that was like an area I think that we glossed over quite a bit, is that it really is a product for everyone. And it doesn't just have to be for women because it's sold by women. So, you know, when we thought about how do we value a market that basically anyone can buy the product. So there's really no limit, but it's also a very competitive market. I really just relied a lot on, I had an advisor from, they went back to school, and had an advisor from, there was an entrepreneurship program. I would talk to other founders who had been on Shark Tank, how, like, what kind of resources did they tap into? I would ask for like free access to like Statista or Euromonitor and some of these like other market research. But it was really hard with a product like ours, because it's like literally anyone can use this, and it can work for any basically everybody. But then how do you value something that, you know, you kind of just have to value it like, all right, what part of the market share do we think we realistically can get? And we also had to factor in Shark Tank is a huge part of that, because in order to go from handcrafting a few hundred units a month to getting the word out and getting more market share, Shark Tank realistically is a large part of that. So then we actually downgraded our value quite a bit to kind of compensate for what we thought like Shark Tank would bring to the table. So that's kind of how we thought about it. And also that it's not a very traditional investor pitch. It's not like going into a VC. There's the entertainment component. There's, you know, the fact that they don't know anything about your company going in, except for maybe a little bit about what they see from due diligence beforehand. So we had to think about it like, you know, if we ask for less, then is this going to give us more of a chance? And then we can sort of like go back and forth from there. But, you know, whether or not that was the right approach, I think it's really hard to tell, because again, it's a very different landscape now. I think valuations are much bigger going into Shark Tank now than when we did it. But that was kind of our approach, just kind of, like compensate for the value that Shark Tank could bring.
Interesting. What about you, Jeff? Did you guys do anything different than what Dinesh and Sarah were talking about?
Yeah, I would say that they're both probably a lot more sophisticated than we were back then. We were 2 years old or just under 2 years, the business, when we filmed. And yeah, I mean, we paid attention to some like industry data. There were some comps out there, some companies that had been acquired or raised money publicly, and you know, there was some sort of valuation that was, you know, generally accepted, some kind of sales multiple. We took a different approach, honestly, and just went really aggressive with our valuation. So we went in asking for 200,000 for 10%, which at the time was like 10 times our trailing 12-month sales. Thinking like, you know, they're going to the first thing they're going to do is slash it in half. So let's go in as strong as we can and try to justify it with whatever we can justify it with, and like push for it, right? And not just kind of let them cut it in half, but give ourselves a buffer where if we have to negotiate, we're not starting from a place that we don't feel comfortable. We're starting from a place where we're very comfortable, and we can kind of go from there. The good news is, after Robert did slash our valuation in half, like we kind of expected, Barbara came back and gave us asking, like what we came in and asked for. So it worked out in our situation, but we definitely added a buffer in there where if they just say, hey, which they did say, we can replace you with any brother or sister combo, and we can find this corn from any farmer, and we don't need you. You know, if we needed that space to negotiate, we kind of had it baked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's smart in terms of negotiation, but it's tough when I think Mr. Wonderful said, "You're not worth $2 million," like when you first, when you
Yeah,
first
and
said that.
totally. And I think like the beauty of Shark Tank too is you can turn those little sound bites, if you're ready and you prepare, right? You can turn those moments into really positive, memorable moments for the viewer. So he comes out and says something like very Mr. Wonderful, right? He's very good at what he does, and then you can kind of rebut with something like, you know, if, I think we said at the time, like if we listened to everybody who said that to us, we wouldn't be here. We, you know, we're scrappy, we fight. And then Mark was like, amen. And then it kind of went down a different path, and you can kind of guide the conversation a little bit. So I don't know, it's a crazy experience. And like like you mentioned, it happens very quickly, but there are those moments where we weren't expecting that one, but you're able to kind of pivot the conversation when people say things like that. But yeah, I mean, he did say it, and you know, he was probably right at the time, but we were young, and we were excited, and we thought like, this is a fair value. 10 times sales is a fair valuation for a company that, I mean, they're essentially paying for what they brought to the table in terms of exposure. But you know, it's just, that was our mentality at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think, Dinesh, I think Barbara said in the beginning that you were blinded by your own enthusiasm.
I mean, yes, I mean, I don't know what she really felt. But another big thing that they missed from my point of view was I only spent $2,000 in ads for 2 years, and we made close to 250K revenue. So that was something that they didn't realize initially. Actually, that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons why, if you notice, Daniel said he quit, saying that the valuations was ridiculous. And then he came back in. The reason he came back in, I mean, they didn't mention that, they didn't show that on the TV, but because I told them, hey, you don't be stuck on my revenue, because I didn't spend money on my revenue, because I was literally following Daniel's footsteps of create, criticize, and then crusade. I was on my criticize phase. I'm trying to improve my product, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money, because I wanted to make sure that I make the best product, because my goal is it to be a commodity in the future. Like, instead of plastic spoon, I want people to use an edible spoon where the single use is a must. So if I have to do that, I have to take it slow. I can't just rush, spend a lot in marketing and make a lot of revenue there. So once I explained that, that's when Daniel came back in, and that's what I think that's one of the reasons why he supported me, saying that your enthusiasm is what is driving you to do such good things. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
again, by the way, as Jeff and Sarah mentioned, they have to say something in those sorts to, like, more like to add the drama to the TV. Everything can't
Oh
be all
yeah.
happy all the time. So, and another thing is, I mean, from what I noticed from my pitch, Mr. Wonderful was actually one of the nicest person there. So they show so much opposite on the TV. I like, okay, he didn't say anything. I mean, like, I don't know. He was one of, like, I completely didn't expect that. He was very nice, actually.
That's awesome. Yeah,
We had
it's
the same
definitely, I mean,
experience for sure. We had the exact same experience. I don't know if he would be happy for us saying it, but he was incredibly nice and supportive
Yeah,
in the room, right? And
yeah,
they air it in a way that like he's,
mm,
you know, he's
yeah,
Mr. Wonderful, but he was incredibly supportive. And he would say something like, "You're not worth 2 million," and then he would be like, "But this popcorn's really delicious," and kind of like give us a little bit and then take it away and then give it back. And he was it made it kind of fun, like pretty lighthearted at the time.
Yeah, like with us, he would kind of hurl out insults, but he's kind of like laughing behind it. He's sort of smiling as he's doing it. He's like, he knows it's for entertainment. And I don't know, I kind of got the sense that he was just like, he just wanted to get the one-liners in, but he was actually really nice. So I couldn't take it as seriously. I was like, I know you're insulting us right now, but I actually can't take it seriously.
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, we got another question. What was the most challenging question that the sharks asked you? Whoever wants to go first. Jeff?
I can jump in there. So I binge watched, like, let's see, I was season 7. I think I binge watched 5 seasons. and I wanted to see every single question they would ask. So I came in really prepared. I was like, they're definitely going to ask this, this, and this. We didn't get any of it. We got like the most basic, like, all right, what are your, how much does it cost to make this? Where do you see it being sold? I think for us, they really focused on, because natural deodorant has, especially at the time, because we were one of the early movers in the market, like it really has this stigma against being ineffective. And so they really focused on, is this actually going to work? So they were really actually demonstrating it. And they were, I think Lori is the one who said she had just eaten Mexican food. So she was putting it on her hand to see if it could get rid of the smell of the Mexican food. So they were really focused on the efficacy of the product and whether it's possible that it could work. And I think I was actually more surprised about that because I had this whole list of questions that I had like memorized. And yeah, it just, we didn't get like half of what I was expecting.
Yeah, I would say we definitely talked a lot about Sarah saying. I think pretty similar to what Sarah's saying around like what's the unit, what are the unit economics, how much does it cost, what's your distribution strategy, where are you sold, what are your growth plans, all this stuff. I think one of the harder questions was like talking about channel strategy. Like, okay, so you're sold in natural, but what are you doing next? And have you talked to this person? And I have contacts here. And again, we were 2 years old where we were like barely, I think we were in a couple Whole Foods stores, not even regions. So I think just in our life cycle, like the business, we weren't prepared to answer that type of question, but we knew that we're probably going to have to. So we had an answer, but I wouldn't say it was a good answer, and it was probably different the next day. But I think talking like in the early phase of our business, talking through channel strategy when we hadn't even mastered one channel yet, let alone trying to understand what's the opportunity in convenience and what's the opportunity in conventional and mass and club, when we were really just focused on like opening up another Whole Foods store. So I think that was really challenging for us.
Makes sense. Dinesh, was there anything that really stuck out as a challenging question from the sharks?
I mean, the question was the straightforward one, which everyone knows why your revenue is so less. So my challenge was to explain that I did not take the strategy of spending and gaining revenue because I was more looking into the stability of the revision of the product. Because I mean, for me, the biggest concern was this is a product which people never thought when people never experienced before. Like who would have thought of eating a spoon, right? So now when I'm creating a completely new experience to avoid a very serious problem that we're facing, I wanted to make sure that the product is good first. So I intentionally sold less. That was the challenge that I had to convince them, saying that I wanted to sell less, get the reviews, get the feedback, then update it. So I actually took both the ones which I had initially when in 2019 of February, when I brought my first edible spoons out. They were a little harder and the taste was a little less, very, very subtle. So then I showed them the latest ones which they were consuming at the time. Like, see, already made 4 revisions and this is what I did. I wouldn't have done this if I had gone super fast and made a lot of revenue. But that was very challenging to explain that because people love numbers, especially investors love numbers. So yeah.
So one of the questions I had too is like, after the show, then what was like the best thing that came out of it? I mean, was it the financial investment, or was it sales, or was it connections? Like what do you think was the best thing that came out of your experience, Dinesh?
Yeah, so obviously the first best thing is the awareness, right? Like millions of people are watching it, so nothing beats that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did go in there I was serious about investment too. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I can't disclose all the details. There are a few few reasons which it didn't go through. They do a pretty strict due diligence. Everyone does that because they only speak with you like for like what 60 to 80 minutes. That's not enough for them to seal the deal. So another thing I learned was after I was going through that, each shack has a percentage. I think there's a hustle, the like a blog or something which came up with this Shark Tank analytics of the 10 seasons they actually analyzed, and they put these numbers like saying like Lori's 50% of them only go through, Mark like
Oh.
some percentage numbers are there. Each shark has its own, they have their own percentage of deals that they close after the pitch. Not, I'm not talking about during the pitch, after the pitch. So I kind of saw that the reason why, okay, don't be too hopeful on the investment point of view, but we have to go in there asking for the investment, because that's most important there, because they'll easily catch that you came here for marketing. Otherwise it's not that hard for them to see that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and after that, again, the third part is the connections. Yes, for me, being an Asian minority owned business here, biggest thing is credibility. Like previously, when on LinkedIn or anything else, where anywhere, if I go to like say McDonald's and say, hey, I have this edible spoon, I invented this, I sold my home, I already sold 3 million of it, do you want to try it out? They might not take me seriously, but now I can say, hey, I'm a Shark Tank alumni, go either
Mm-hmm.
please watch the episode, or do you want to check it out, check our product out? So that credibility is the biggest gain that I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the sales were the first 6 months after it airs, the sales are pretty good, and all those things are pretty nice. But the long-term benefit of it is, once you are a Shark Tank alum, you're always a Shark Tank alum,
Yeah.
irrespective of whether the deal goes through or not. So that can be a big credibility factor for me, especially because people shouldn't think me as a scam or someone, right? So like, who is this guy
Yeah.
coming with an edible spoon? So that is the biggest advantage that I got.
What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I completely agree with Dinesh that it's the credibility, because we're operating in such an, basically it's a really competitive market. I mean, when we started, there was a couple really like mass produced brands, some of the big drugstore chain brands. They didn't work, they were ineffective, they were cheaply made, a lot of them weren't actually natural. And now over the last I would say maybe 3 to 5 years, it's like natural deodorant is everywhere. It's a competitive market, and it's a really tough product to get right. But the brands that do get it right, it's there's like infinite potential within this, because people want naturals now, and that's where the industry is going. And so it's the same thing. Like if we're going out to, pitch for a retailer, or if we're going out to pitch for a partnership, it's really just that added credibility to say, okay, well, this was on Shark Tank. If you want to learn more about it, you can watch our episode. That's a great way to 7 minutes of product education. And then it's kind of that stamp of approval. And then there's like just really diehard Shark Tank fans. So in some of the retailers, I've actually seen, if it's an e-commerce retailer, for example, if they have that, they mention the as seen on Shark Tank, especially on Amazon, that's big. So it really, it's the credibility. And then just knowing that, there is that kind of, it's like a really cool kind of like element to your storytelling in a way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would agree with that. Like that's one of the biggest things that has come out of it long term.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say in addition to all of those points, which are 100% true for Pipcorn as well, I would say like one of the more tangible kind of things that's come out of it is all these re-airs. So once it gets into syndication on CNBC, like we're back on TV once every 2 months, once every month, or whatever it is, and we see this spike in sales. Not a major spike, but something substantial enough. And every time we see it, we're like, because we don't always know that we're going to be on a re-air. All the Google alerts in the world, it doesn't catch every single one. So we'll see a spike, and then we'll more often than not, it was a re-air on Shark Tank. So that, I think that was like a pretty major one. Another one, which any consumer of the product would never know, is the and this kind of maybe plays in the credibility aspect a little bit, but like when we go to trade shows now, this barrier between like brand and buyer at like a big retailer is kind of broken down a little bit, where we can meet people at trade shows. They feel like they know us. Like at least the food community, the buyers, the retailers are like massive Shark Tank fans, because there's a lot of food companies that go on and they can learn a lot and find new companies.
Mhm.
So we've found that since being on the show, when we're at trade shows specifically, and there's like tens of thousands of people, maybe not in the last couple of years, but kind of walking through, this barrier has already been broken down between us and a buyer, that we can have a conversation. They so many questions about Shark Tank that we can immediately jump into and kind of form a personal connection. which has helped us out in a major way. I think that's just because of the fan base that Shark Tank's been able to build, especially in our industry. It's so strong. So I think those are just two, kind of, pretty tangible positive outcomes from being on that we weren't really, expecting when we were on and when we aired.
Yeah, that's a good point. So somebody has asked, what bump in sales did you see after your episode aired, and how long did it last? So what kind of effect did going on the show have immediately? And then of course, like you mentioned, the re-airs can also give you a boost as well. Dinesh?
I mean,
Yep. So there is definitely the first, I think, when it airs, in that there are two big bumps. One is the East Coast time, and the other one is the West Coast time. So it depends on which coast you are. There are two different big, like literally big hills that the number of people visits your websites and the number of orders and all that. And beyond that, sometime like you can expect pretty good sales in the rest of the week, because at this current timeline, a lot of people watch it after they record it, or sometimes they watch it on Hulu or Amazon or some other streaming platforms, right? So the first 2 weeks is pretty good, and beyond that it'll like slowly die down. The number of visitors go down, sales go down. But as Jeff aptly mentioned, whenever they have a rerun, you'll see another small blips again. So that's pretty good, and you'll have a lot of people messaging you. So that's something that you can have fun looking at it. So I personally took it up to myself to read each and every message. That's really giving me nice, boost that I should do this for the greater good and all that. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, like going back to the thing I wish we did differently was preparing with more inventory, or just having better manufacturing relationships beforehand, because we did get the sales boost, but we weren't able to fulfill a lot of those orders. So I think from an awareness point, and then also to your point about the reruns and all of that, it's incredible for sales because it's organic marketing. But if you're not prepared, like in the infrastructure of the company, then that also comes with its own challenges. So we got the we got the awareness, we got the sales boost, but it was really being able to fulfill those orders and actually build on that momentum that we were really caught up that first, like I said, about 6 months after our first air date.
That makes sense. Anything else, Jeff?
Yeah, I think, probably a lot of the same. We also had some pretty major inventory issues that we hadn't, we were not prepared. And that was a tough one for us, but no, I think I'm trying to think back, but it's coming up. We're coming up on 8 years. That's like a long time, which doesn't feel like 8 years, but time goes quickly.
For sure. So somebody else was asking, whether are there downsides to being on the show? I mean, obviously, like being out of stock is not great, but is there anything else that was maybe more challenging because you went on Shark Tank? Go ahead, Dinesh.
Oh yeah. So even we went through the inventory issues too, as I mentioned before. But beyond that, a couple of downsides that I can foresee is the biggest minus or con of being on air with the national television at the premium spot is everyone knows about it now. You can expect some competition ahead, so it's not that straightforward. So if you have your patent ready and already filed and approved, then it's fine. But if not, I think that would be the biggest takeaway, is that you have to go with a patent that's filed, if possible, if patentable. So you'll have a lot of copycats and that come out, and you need to make sure you have a strategic plan to take care of future competition, because now you're more aware, your product is more out there in the market.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think just because of the nature of media, it's very fickle. So if a brand is just relying, or a company is just relying on Shark Tank to grow, then that's going to present challenges later on, because there is this kind of, I would say maybe give it a year and a half, that there's real frenzy around it. And then, it dies off over time, and you really have to stand aside as a brand and identity aside from that. So it's great for credibility, and long-term you do get the reruns, and there's also a great network. There's a great network of other Shark Tank founders out there. So there's a lot of long-term benefits, but that, like, the sales bump, the PR, the awareness, that's all very short-term. So I'd say, like, really just the brands that stand out, or, stand the test of time, are the ones that have a strategy aside from, or can either build on the momentum or have a strategy aside, an identity aside from Shark Tank.
Well, yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I mean, I think that Shark Tank happens so quickly, and your world as an entrepreneur changes like literally overnight to the rest of the world, right? Like you've been working on this behind the scenes, but things are different, and we found it very difficult to stay. And again, we were young, like our business was very young, but like staying on strategy and not being distracted by this shiny thing or that shiny thing. It's like, we started this for a reason. Let's keep doing what we want to do here. Let's not go off on this tangent because we, met this great broker because of the Shark Tank exposure, and they're going to bring us on to whatever, and there's massive sales opportunity, but it's not really on strategy. It's not going to help us build the brand. It's not what we want to do. It's going to suck up our capacity, which we don't really have a lot of. So I think all those little opportunities are great. And sometimes things come up that can make your business, right? But the other side of it is, I think, staying focused on the overall strategy and the path and what the plan was, versus there's a lot of inbounds when you're on Shark Tank, and trying to sift through and figure out what's real and what's good for the business, I think was a bit of a challenge for us, because you kind of want, like, you feel like it's a moment in time and it's going to go away, and you want to take full advantage of it. But sometimes that's saying no to opportunities. Sometimes that's saying, let's connect in a year where it's not the right time for us. And, always, it never hurts to make unnecessary friends, but, not like doing that in a way and kind of tiptoeing so you don't upset people and offend people. But I think staying on strategy is a really hard one, because it is such an exciting moment and you want to go run. But sometimes you have to slow down and make sure that all the decisions that you're making are still on strategy and going to push you forward in the way that you want to kind of proceed forward. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, I wanted to talk with you all specifically today, because your businesses are all impact driven. You're working to eliminate single-use plastic and non-toxic products. And Jeff, for yours, I mean, you're using an heirloom product. I don't remember I don't remember that being part of the pitch on the show. Is that something that was cut, or did you not feel like that was going to really help get the investment?
So we actually spent a fair amount of time talking about the kernel, what makes it different, the kind of surety of supply and the farming relationships. But the average pitch is pretty long, and they cut it down to the same 6 to 8 minutes, right? So I think once we went down a path of like negotiating a deal, a lot of what aired on TV was like that kind of process, and kind of putting numbers together and kind of going back. And I don't know if a lot of that heirloom conversation really made it on, but I think it was because of just the progression of our conversation. It kind of escalated very quickly. And then there just wasn't enough time to maybe fit it all in. And honestly, back then, heirloom was still today, like, we're doing a lot of work around the education of what heirloom farming means and why it's better. And, for a lot of reasons, but this was 8 years ago, where like, if it wasn't an heirloom tomato or like a family heirloom, it wasn't really like part of the conversation. So I think maybe there was just maybe there was a component too, that was just like, maybe it wouldn't resonate as well as it maybe would today. So we definitely talked about it, but it just didn't make it on all the way, which, that's okay. That's kind of, when you go on, you don't have control. You just try to, answer good questions and stay composed. So however they cut it, it's going to be, hopefully positive. But yeah, we definitely talked about it, but it didn't make it on in a major way.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully that kind of, the awareness that's generated can, hopefully open the door for you to have more discussions around that. Did you think the same thing, Sarah, with the non-toxic? And I mean, it seemed like you were fairly early on in the industry for promoting, single or getting rid of the plastic packaging and using non-toxic products too.
Yeah, well, because we were so early, but I think we were right at that inflection point. Like people were definitely talking about naturals and looking into it and wanted something effective, but it definitely wasn't what it is today. So I think we really struck a chord with that because we talked about both the dangers of conventional, without making claims, but we also went into the benefits of natural, and then we saw we really grew with the market. Now I would say one thing, because we were so early, now there's a lot of brands that are innovating on packaging. And when we first expanded our product, we kind of went with the options that we had on the table. And it took many years to understand like what's really going on behind the scenes, how recyclable is each type of material. And there's so many new innovations that even just in the last few years, there's so many new innovations in sustainable packaging. So we've really had to adapt with all of these new innovations. So now, back then we were very much focused on non-toxic formulas. Now we're focused on sustainable fulfillment, sustainable manufacturing, and also earth-friendly packaging. So we use, like, for example, we use recycled ocean-bound plastic. We also use aluminum, which is BPA-free, recyclable. But all of these things were just so new, either non-existent in the conversation when we started, or it was so new that as a small brand, we just didn't have the connections or the ability to understand like how we could innovate in both formula and packaging. So it really took a lot of years to kind of build into that. But it's always been important to us, and it's always like been core to the brand. So it was a very, very natural transition.
No, that's really interesting. I had put out a poll a little while ago, last week, I guess, asking, founders if would they consider going on Shark Tank, and some people had mentioned that it would be a really good platform for conveying the things that were really important about their product and how it could make the world better. So I mean, Dinesh, I think you focused on that a lot with your pitch. Do you think that there's value there, that you were able to show people a little bit more about single-use plastic and some solutions?
Yeah, sure. First, I'll answer on the good note that people understood my pain and what I'm trying to do, the frustration with plastic pollution. And like US alone disposes of 100 million plastic cutlery per day, per day. So my question was more like, rather than, hey, yeah, the problem exists, the solution is here, rather than that, my question to the viewers or the audience was, why don't we think twice before doing that? Why before we act on it? So my entire journey started with that question alone, because I watched a lot of documentaries, I read a lot of articles about plastic pollution, but when I was at the ice cream shop, why didn't I think twice before using the plastic spoon for 10 minutes? So it's more like the question of questioning ourselves rather than whether the product exists, or like anything than that. So initially, the story was, I had this huge the first 90 seconds or 60 seconds, they won't interrupt you. It's your pitch time. That's what you see, right? Everyone comes to the carpet and they pitch you the product, and the story. So that first few 90 seconds, I planned for such an elaborate what do you call, a setup thing, saying that, okay, it's in the future, you can't drink the water you're drinking, you can't breathe the air because there's so much of microplastics across, and like I was trying to make it too futuristic and scare people. But then I had the producer said, that's too scary, make it more fun and mellow down.
Make
So
it more fun.
yeah, so I was like, okay, I was actually having such a nice ideas to, how to scare people that plastic pollution is such a big threat. But then things have changed as we proceeded with the producers they assigned to you, and they talked to you and all that stuff. They gave more ideas and all. They wanted to be more fun and then still convey the message, and that's how it showed up and ended up in like finally.
That's awesome. Make single-use plastic more fun. That's
Mhm.
rough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, there's so many brands in our community that are working to make a positive impact on the planet and figure out ways to tell that story. And I think having a positive way of like, here's a solution rather
Mhm,
than
mhm.
focusing on, the doom and
Problem.
gloom that is
Mhm.
going to become the planet if we don't do something is usually a little better off to focus on the positive.
No, hey,
Well,
but Kate, who said the truth is always hard to hear.
I know that's the tough part, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man. Well, I'm so glad to have you all here today, and I know that this has been super valuable for people who are interested in Shark Tank and considering it. I mean, do you have any final parting advice for founders who are thinking about Shark Tank? Is it something you'd recommend, or any words of wisdom to leave us with, Sarah?
Wow, there's too many. I think I would just say, like, I would say one thing is, if you have a gut feeling about where you're going to end up after the show, follow that. That's kind of one thing that I think back to, I think we went into it and I was thinking, okay, maybe we're going to be very small. Maybe it's niche. Like maybe it's okay that we don't have enough inventory. But my God, I'm like, I think this is a pretty big opportunity. I think this is a big market. It's not going to be a niche product. So I think a lot of it's really just like, your product, you've been working on it behind the scenes before you go on, hopefully before you go on Shark Tank. So, having that infrastructure in place is all very important, but also really being able to tune into what you believe, because you're going to hear a lot of different opinions going into the show. So yeah, really just trying to understand like, what is your gut feeling and how do you follow that in such a short time span?
Oh, I love that. Jeff, what about you? Any advice?
Yeah, I mean, just from experience, I would say prepare in the ways that are obvious, kind of stuff Sarah's saying. I think Dinesh mentioned as well, like from an inventory perspective, from a supply chain perspective, get as and it honestly, like the response is like there are some people that sell $1 million a night at Shark Tank, and some people get very few orders. So I can't say prepare X amount, but just prepare. But I think more important is stuff that you might not think about, like customer service. Like have a
Mhm.
plan to like get back to people, over communicate. You know, that was big for us. Like we had a full time person who was only answering questions for customers that were wondering where their order was or where can I find you, and like that's like it's such a rabid audience, and they're a very welcoming audience, but they don't want to feel like they're being taken advantage of either, which is I think human nature. So if they order and they don't hear from you and they've paid but haven't gotten the products, like I think just communication is huge, and it's such a massive opportunity and so much exposure that you're going to get a ton of inbound emails. So I think customer service was one side I wish we could go back and and have done that better from day one. So whenever I talk to someone going on, I always say like, yeah, inventory, sales, great, but the short term challenge is like how do you want to like kind of best foot forward first, one chance to make a first impression. And I think over communicating is really important with the Shark Tank audience.
Oh, that is great advice, because it's not something that, I mean, you don't want to prepare to be out of stock, but you want to be able to know what you're going to say when you are.
And even if you are in stock, there's still going to be people that want to place an order over the phone or who messed up their order and need to change a zip code. Or,
Mhm.
even in the best case scenario, you have all the inventory, you plan perfectly, there's zero, inventory risk, and your kind of cash to cash is what it should be. So you sold it all and everything is great. You're shipping it. There's still going to be tons of inbounds that you can't, if like FedEx messes up, they're going to call you. So even in the
Mhm.
best case scenario, I think having a really tight customer service, I guess whatever, person or agency, for me, it would have been huge back then.
Mm. Mhm. What about you, Dinesh?
So can I ask you a question? So is this the question related to people who are planning to apply for it or already applied for it or in the process of about to be aired? So the reason I'm
Oh
asking,
yeah, I was thinking more people who would like to apply but have not been
yeah,
in the process yet.
sure. In that aspect, I was lucky enough to be scouted by one of the producers
Mhm.
there. So the suggestion or the for the aspirants who are planning to go and apply for Shark Tank, I could give is if from the food industry side of things, but again, it depends on which industry you are in. That the thing that worked for me was I went ahead and pitched to a lot of these trade shows. So most of the trade shows have this pitch competitions. So go apply for them. Like I literally, I'm an engineer by background. To understand food industry, I attended 10 trade shows in the first year. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even spend a lot. I just went and asked them for free pass or free like half price booth or something like that. And for attending a pitch competition, they won't even charge you generally, even if they charge you, it's a very little less. So what happened was these pitch competitions, as you win, as you be more visible, then there's a high chance that they will come and scout you. And the second method that I've noticed was from the previous Shark Tank companies. If you're on Kickstarter through a successful campaign, I see that a lot of people scout you looking at the product at Kickstarter as well. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another suggestion. But again, it may or may not be a match being on Kickstarter. But trade shows was pretty simple for me, and I believe, I don't know, I can't guarantee say, I mean, for sure say that how they scouted me, but we won the best product at the Winter Fancy Food Show back in 2020, and that's how I got an email 2 weeks after. So I suppose it was the reason. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And is there anything that you want to ask of our community, or where can people find your products, or is there something that you need feedback on, or you need a connection to, or anything like that you want to put out there, Dinesh?
Yeah, so I'll be happy to be connected to LinkedIn. So my Dinesh Tadepalli at LinkedIn. You can search for my name, and I'll be happy to connect and answer if any other questions if you guys have. And just keep pushing. Go with your passion. And if you want to eat your spoon or spork, go to incredibleleats.com. I recommend going to our website rather than Amazon, because I'm finding it hard to convince Amazon not to use the bubble wrappers to send send the spoons that are not plastic. So my Shopify takes care of that. We only send in using paper wrappers and paper pouches. So yeah,
Very nice. Jeff?
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I would say same as Dinesh. If you're thinking about going on, or you are going on, and you have an air date already planned, like definitely reach out. It's a tight community. I think someone mentioned it earlier. It's a small community, but we all like to support each other as best. We're all busy, but there's like this fear bond that exists with people that have gone on Shark Tank. That's like this experience that's so unique, that I think everyone likes to kind of reflect, if it's a good experience. But yeah, just if I can be helpful at all, definitely reach out. And if you want some snacks, head to Whole Foods. I would say Whole Foods is probably the best, and also the website. And I would also, we've been having our own Amazon issues, so pipsnacks.com.
Okay, perfect.
And as thank you as well for the opportunity. It's always nice to reflect and reminisce a little bit.
Awesome.
Yes, so by the way, I tried the truffle pipcorn at Whole Foods, so highly recommend that if you find yourself at Whole Foods. It's really
Thank you.
Yeah. So I realize I don't have my brand name here, so you can see it's Piper Y. And this is it's piperY.com. And then yeah, it is a very tight-knit community. So if you have any questions about going on, or even how to source getting on, there's so many different avenues, especially for diverse founders, women founders. So reach out to me. My name's here for LinkedIn, Sarah Ribner, and then yeah, piperY.com. And then to try the product, I would highly recommend either piperY.com or Amazon if you want to get it in 2 days. But if you want to try our other products, we have a full product line at piperY.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I have not tried Piper Y, but I've tried the others. Pipcorn, I ate like a whole bag of the truffle popcorn last night. I've got some incredible spoons right here. So happy to support your businesses, and so happy to hear your insights, and grateful that you're willing to share that with our community. So thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.